Larry, you remember one of the reasons that people voted for Donald Trump was that he was talking about, reducing these military bases outside of the United States and bring them back home in order to
Right.
make the United States stronger, make America first again. Do you think that sort of policy has somehow is disappearing from the scene?
Yeah. In fact, my understanding is we're wanting to build uh, between Sweden and Norway more than 10 new bases. So uh, we're like crack addicts or meth addicts, and we can't stop. We can't help ourselves. Yeah, we know we ought to stop. Our teeth are rotting. you know, uh, where we look 20 years older than we really are. But by God, we got to keep spending that money on military affairs and intervening in the affairs of other countries. We just can't help ourselves. So it is, Trump has betrayed his base on that, and they're turning against him.
Look at the deal we just apparently worked out with South Korea to provide them with the same kind of submarine technology and submarines that we're supposedly going to provide Australia. We can't even build the submarines ourselves. Both programs, attack and ballistic, are well beyond cost and well beyond schedule. By congressional law, they're supposed to be canceled, automatically canceled because of those two factors. They're not going to do that because they're so serious. But does South Korea believe it's ever going to see these? Does Australia believe it's ever going to see these? Now, here's the skinny. We're hoping that the programs will become so behind schedule and so expensive in our own shipyards that they will take over and they will build them, maybe according to our diagrams, blueprints, and so forth, to an extent. And they think we're never going to surrender the top, most sophisticated nuclear submarine technology to anybody, period. Not even this grifter in the Oval Office today. So what are the South Koreans and the Australians going to get? Air in a bag, probably.
Yeah. Larry, after the talks, 5 hours of negotiations, the last round, if I'm not mistaken, was the sixth round of negotiations between the United States and Russia. And here, what John Bolton is talking about, he believes that Donald Trump is selling out Ukraine, and that wouldn't benefit the United States position. And here is what he said, Larry.
Write a piece for the Telegraph talking about Trump and your view selling out Ukraine, but the headline there says, but the tide may be turning. So perhaps pick up on that part of it if you can.
Well, I think by this point, enough Republicans in Congress have seen that there really isn't any hope that Trump is going to look out for American strategic interest here. He's looking for a Nobel Peace Prize. It's just as straightforward as that. He doesn't care what the substantive terms of the agreement are, so long as he can declare success. And I think there are still enough Republicans in Congress and plenty in the country who oppose the Russian aggression, who think it harms vital American national interest and peace and security in Europe. And I hope, as has been emerging over the past 30 days, that more Republicans in Congress are prepared to disagree with the president in public. That's the hope I have.
What is the strategic national interest of the United States in Ukraine, and how is that going to help the United States if the war continues the way that is, the Europeans together with Ukrainians are fighting?
No, Colonel Wilkerson's wrong. Number one, there are a lot of members of Congress that are counting on those millions of dollars that Zelensky's siphoning off. So come on, they got to have retirement accounts too, So I have never seen so much delusional horse manure in my life. It doesn't matter what the U.S. Congress thinks or does. It doesn't matter what Donald Trump thinks or does. Russia is going to crush Ukraine militarily. The only way they can keep Ukraine intact as a semi-functioning nation is to negotiate right away with Russia and accept Russia's terms. This is not like you wanted to buy a new car and you've got all the money in the world, and you got a car dealer who's got new cars that he wants to sell. So you both come to the table with advantages and strengths, and so then you can actually negotiate. You can try to get him down in price, and he can try to maybe get you to buy some add-ons. But that's not what's going on between Ukraine and Russia. Russia has total advantage over Ukraine, and that advantage is only going to increase geometrically in the coming months. This war will effectively be over by the end of next year at the latest, perhaps sooner, because the losses that Ukraine is suffering, the advances that Russia is now making on the ground. I pointed out in a piece I put up last night, in just November alone, Russia has taken 701 square kilometers. Let's put that in perspective. Gaza is 350 square kilometers. So Russia has taken an area in 1 month that's twice the size of Gaza. Meanwhile, the Israeli military, supposedly one of the greatest armies in the world, have failed to conquer and defeat Hamas after 25 months in a territory that's half the size of what Russia's taken in just 1 month. And, the number of reasons for this, apart from the incompetence of the Israelis. I mean, they're vicious murderers, but as far as being competent military personnel, they're an undisciplined lot. Russia's just the opposite. And the advantages that Russia now has with personnel, their total ground forces have grown. They were about 300,000 in 2022 in February. They're now about 1.5 million. So they now have the manpower, the depth to push offensives on multiple axes of attack. And the West and Ukraine can't do anything to stop it. And so that's, listening to Bolton talk about this, go ahead, pass whatever resolution you want. Sanction Russia some more. How did that work out so far? It strengthened the Russian economy and convinced the Russians we don't need the United States. And as far as the strategic relationship with Europe, name one thing beyond blue cheese and champagne that Europe is good for. They don't provide critical natural resources to us. I mean, there's not a single thing anymore that the United States needs Europe for. Europe is like that obnoxious freeloading relative that comes to live with you and not pay rent. That's Europe.
Nima, you're a media type, right? You'd admit to that. Ask yourself a question. Why the hell would you have one of the United States' leading neoconservative, self-admitted neoconservative, raunchy neoconservative? Why would you have him on other than to spark the kind of controversy that they were looking to spark? I mean, that's like having Lindsey Graham on. It's like having Marco Rubio on, except Marco Rubio comes with the imprimatur of being Secretary of State. God forbid that she should ever exercise that in a significant way. Why would you have him on? Why would you even listen to him? He is saying what Lindsey Graham and other people like him wish were happening. Now, I think the Republicans in the Congress, reprehensible that some of them are, along with their Democratic colleagues, and chicken shits that they are, par excellence, are nonetheless awakening to the fact that the neoconservatives in particular have really fouled everything up in this country. And there are even some of them who are trying to figure out a way to counter them, people like Bolton and even Rubio. I hope they succeed. I hope they gather some strength and succeed. And there are Democrats who would join them. Not a lot, but there are some people who are showing signs of real legislative life in that moribund body.
Yeah.
And that would be very beneficial for the country if they suddenly did.
Today I talked with Ambassador Chas Freeman. The point that he was mentioning is that Europe is trying to buy the U.S. weapons with the money they don't have. The United States is going to sell them the weapons that they cannot produce, and Ukrainians going to use those weapons, imaginary weapons, with the soldiers they don't have it. But after all, Larry, what's the plan on the part of Europeans? Because I don't know if you've heard that Merz is desperately trying to use the Russian frozen assets to send them as loan as something like that to Ukraine to use them against Russia.
Yeah. You used a funny word there. Plan? They're not planning. Are you kidding? They're making this up as they go along. This has not panned out as they had anticipated. Back in February of 22, I've heard Alexander Mercouris of the Durand describe, he said that there was a NATO meeting there right after, Putin launched the special military operation. And the NATO country, they were giddy with joy because they really thought, oh, by God, we got those Russians now. We're going to put sanctions on them. Their army's terrible. They're going to lose. We're going to win. Yay. And now, 4 years later, they're looking around going, did anybody get the number of that truck that just ran me over? They have been completely squashed. So they have no plan. And let's put something in perspective. Again, if you want to call it a plan, they want to put long-range missiles into Ukraine so Ukraine can strike deep into Russia and take out its refineries and shut down its weapon production facilities. We now have 46 months of evidence of what happens when Russia fires Kinzhals, Iskanders, go down the list of various missiles and drone attacks on factories, facilities, munitions storage plants, etc., across Ukraine. They've been hitting it, and particularly over the last 12 months, almost every day. Now, that hasn't caused Ukraine to collapse yet. There is no way in any realm of reality that Ukraine, even if the West had industrial facilities capable of this, could produce enough weapons to inflict the kind of damage on Russia that's been inflicted on Ukraine. So my point is, if firing all these missiles, yeah, it sounds great, but Russia knows there's still limitations to what you can achieve. You ultimately got to put troops on the ground, march forward. You do take territory, and you do kill a bunch of their soldiers. And then ultimately, that's how you win this. It's not the only way. I mean, you've got to have the economic plan in place. But it's just, again, it shows how detached from reality these people in Europe are. They don't think through the logistics of this. And we've had it, this kind of magical thinking. I mean, good God, it goes back to World War II, where, Curtis LeMay and the others with the 8th Air Force, they thought, man, all we got to do is just drop enough bombs on Germany and the Germans will surrender. Well, didn't work out. Same for Japan. And so they persist with this mythology now. All we got to do is drop enough bombs, fire enough missiles, and the other side will be crippled and can't continue the fight. And we've got ample evidence. We can look at Ukraine. What Ukraine has been beaten up badly, but they're still standing. And Russia recognizes that they're going to have to, push them into the Dnieper River, and they're going to take more territory before this is over.